seconds and counting. 9.
Mercury astronaut Gordon Cooper was the last American astronaut to go up in space alone. He orbited the planet 22 times. While stationed at Edwards Air Force Base in the early 1950s, Cooper was part of an event that has never been explained.
I was having some cameramen film the installation of a precision landing facility we were putting in right on the edge of the dry lake. And this saucer flew right over them and put down 3 little gear and landed out on the dry lake bed. And they went out, picked up their cameras and moved on out toward him filming. And he lifted off, put the gear back in the well, and climbed out at a very high rate of speed and disappeared. By the time they got back with the developed film, I was on the higher and higher and higher level officer talking to me. Finally with the colonel telling me to, when the film arrived at my desk, to put it in the carrier pouch. There would be a courier there at my office by that time already, and they'd arranged for him to fly in our base airplane back to Washington with these films. And do not run prints, etc., etc., etc.
Did you watch the film?
We didn't have a chance to run it. I had a chance to hold it up to the window and look at it. It was certainly a good film.
Did you ever keep in touch with anybody about it or discuss it?
How would I keep in touch with anybody about it? There's no way within the military or within the government of keeping track of something that is classified unless you're directly involved in it, and I was not.
This meeting was a turning point for my father. Gordon Cooper was an icon of his generation, and my father was amazed by his story.
At that point in time, there was no doubt in my mind that this vehicle was made at some other place than here on Earth.
That must have been extraordinary.
Yeah, well, Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon coming true.
After the film was sent to Washington, it was never seen or heard of again. Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell was the 6th man to walk on the moon. He has met with people in military and government positions from several countries who have privately shared with him information about UFOs.
Seem to be well-documented events that represent flying craft that do not match anything we have in an earthbound arsenal.
I felt that Dr. Mitchell would know the reasons for secrecy. Why was Stonewall?
I can't answer that question. I think it's long past time to open this up to the public. But the best answer is probably because they don't know what to do about it anyhow.
My father and I caught up with President Carter at a book signing in San Francisco.
What happened to the UFO issue?
What happened to it?
The UFO issue.
I don't really know what happened to it. I saw one, but I don't know what, it just disappeared.
Okay.
Did you ask when you were president? What is it?
Yes, but there's a lot of different answers, and nobody has proof of things.
The question of secrecy has puzzled me for years. I asked the panelists in D.C. to offer possible explanations. Some of the questions that Man on Street have, and whoever wants to address this can, is why, in your opinion, would any government hide this from the people or not disclose this type of information of what's going on?
And when there are witnesses or sightings coming in, they are very reluctant to pick up the issue, to investigate, because they have no structure and they don't know how to handle it.
Si existe una amenaza de origen desconocido que no tiene explicación, eso podría amenazar este sistema de conservación de poder.
I suspect there are at least 5 agencies in the U.S. government that have investigative capability and do maintain files on UFOs.
The public opinion, I think, is asking for information and is ready to believe that there is something serious. If we can convince the government, it could change. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jean-Claude Ribes, and I am an astronomer working for the French Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique from 1963 to 1998. I contributed to the French Cometa report, a 3-year military study on UFOs and national security, released in 1999.
Cometa translates as Committee for In-Depth Studies. It was, in essence, a high-level think tank. Cometa included such members as 4-star General Bernard Lorlin, who was the former commander of the French Tactical Air Force and military counselor to the Prime Minister, as well as André Lebeau, former president of the National Center for Space Studies, and attorney-at-law Michel Algarin, director of the Cometa Group. The Cometa Group published its findings in an historical 90-page report titled UFOs in Defense, What Should We Prepare For? The formation of the Cometa Group was initiated by French Air Force General Denis Letty. Cometa concluded that about 5% of the cases studied were inexplicable and that the best explanation was what the authors called the extraterrestrial hypothesis. With investigative journalist Leslie Kane, I flew to France to meet General Letty. We met the general at his home on the outskirts of Paris. We went over some of the more puzzling encounters that led the group to their conclusions.
And he saw the disc hovering.
Pilot sightings confirmed by radar.
Going very quickly out of his sight.
And cases involving soil and plant analysis from landing sites. I had looked into one of these cases myself. Farmer Renato Nicolai from Trans-en-Provence reported that a disc-shaped object landed in his garden in the late afternoon.
La forme, c'était comme si on posait deux assiettes, l'una sull'autre.
When he told his wife, she assumed he had heat stroke and had hallucinated. However, scientific analysis of the landing site showed high levels of radiation, and when I visited the site back in 1999, almost 20 years later, nothing had grown in that spot. The town of Trans-en-Provence labeled the farmer a flying saucer fanatic.
Je peux pas dire que c'était une soucoupe volante, que c'était... J'ai vu quelque chose, il s'est posé, il est reparti.
What we're looking at? I mean, what is this photograph? General Letty also shared with us some impressive photographic cases. One of these was featured on the cover of the Cometa report. So it's mapping? Is it mapping the ground?
Mapping the ground. And developing...
A mapping plane from the government of Costa Rica was flying at 10,000 feet. It had a high-resolution camera running automatically under the fuselage, taking a picture every 17 seconds. On one of the frames, this object was captured. After careful analysis by several scientists, including Richard Haynes and Jacques Vallée, it was determined that the object captured on film was a real three-dimensional airborne object.
So do you think if it was announced that people would panic? If the government's announced, well, the unidentified objects are real?
I cannot say yes, but I cannot say no.
I asked the general to explain the Cometa report's extraterrestrial hypothesis.
For us, we think that the best explanation is that object came from outside. We don't say they come from outside, but the best explanation is that hypothesis.
In 2007, an investigative branch of CNES, the French equivalent of NASA, made 1,600 sightings spanning 5 decades available to the public. I asked CNES for an interview. I wanted to know who allowed the release of these files and why.
C'est le président du Centre national d'études spatiales, quand il a décidé de remettre en route l'activité du GEPAN, de réorganiser, qui a donné comme mission de travailler de façon transparente vis-à-vis du public et des médias.
We reviewed several extraordinary cases. Some even involved landings. I asked him what his personal beliefs were.
Je crois que probablement nous découvrirons dans le futur que peut-être il y a de tout et que certains cas sont peut-être des visites extraterrestres, mais d'autres cas seront probablement des observations naturelles qu'on n'arrive pas encore à expliquer aujourd'hui.
Et ça, c'est grand comme histoire.
C'est grande histoire. C'est un grand projet.
Ouais.
Big job. Good job.